It's a slow decline into being unable to cope with life.
It just leaves you as a shell of a person.
The trauma is deep. It feels like everything about you is wrong.
Telling people they need to change, that they're saving them from a fate worse than death. But they're wrong.
It was as if there was an advert every second of my life kind of saying, you're wrong because you're gay.
If you were a good enough Christian, you would not be gay any longer.
Why I was attracted to other men was because I was ashamed of myself.
This has to stop. And frankly, religions need to understand the harm that they have inflicted on far too many vulnerable people.
How could the man that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, how could he no longer be here?
I'm a survivor of conversion therapy. I was lucky. Many people don't survive conversion therapy.
LGBT rights in the UK have come a long way, but it's still legal to try and change or suppress someone's sexuality or gender identity through so-called conversion therapy.
Today it mainly happens in religious communities. It can be anything from talk therapy to pastoral counselling to exorcisms and even corrective rape. But the message is always the same. Who you are is wrong and you need to change. It's now been 4 years since the government promised to ban conversion therapy, and campaigners are still waiting. I'm going to try and speak to someone who's been through it and someone who practices it. I want to find out just how harmful can it be to pray the gay away.
Nice to meet you. Yes.
Joe Hyman calls himself a survivor of conversion therapy. Growing up gay in an Orthodox Jewish community, Joe started to feel increasingly isolated and rejected. With no one to turn to, he desperately looked for a solution.
Jews offering new alternatives to homosexuality, Jonah, this organisation. I found it on a website, it was an advert, and for the first time in my life, someone understood me, was talking about the things that were going on in my head that I didn't understand. I could talk about sexual thoughts, I could talk about my body, I could talk about my feelings, and this person could say, oh, you know, that's okay, you're okay, you know, you're not gay, you're just thinking this, you're just thinking gay thoughts. But little did I know that it would really psychologically damage me and abuse me in a way that I still kind of deal with today.
And you were only 17.
Yeah.
For over 2.5 years, Joe would see a therapist who would try to find the cause of his homosexuality.
It was as if there was an advert every second of my life kind of saying, you're wrong because you're gay. So having that for 2.5 years really strips you of the ability to experience joy in your life, really strips you of the ability to have deep relationships with people because you're always holding something back. That just leaves you as a shell of a person.
But Joe isn't the only case. The government's own survey found out that over 180,000 people had been offered conversion therapy and over 70,000 people had undergone it. But conversion therapy can have horrible consequences. Almost half of the people who went through it thought about taking their own life, and 1 in 5 attempted suicide. Conversion therapy is an umbrella term and has many different faces.
For me, it was talking therapy. The beginning of my journey with conversion therapy was one where I was told, these are the reasons you're gay. You know, one being that I was lacking something in my masculinity, and that lacking meant that I was attracted to men and not women. There was an assumption that I had an overbearing mother and an absent father, which is so common in the tropes about gay people. It's horrible, but for me it resonated. So it took advantage of the fact that I actually had those experiences. I didn't play football. I hate football, and my mum, was a big part of my life growing up.
What sounded like benign conversations turned out to be deeply harmful.
Talking therapy, what's the big deal? Growing up gay, there's automatically shame. Shame that you're wrong, that you're broken, that you're different. What happened with conversion therapy is that shame was taken and exacerbated, I guess, 100-fold. Thoughts that I had about guys, thoughts that I had about men were kind of monitored. It's framing sexuality as if it's an addiction. One way that they speak about it is they'll call it same-sex attraction.
So what if you want to get rid of your so-called same-sex attraction? I'm on my way to meet Ali, who claims he overcame his homosexual feelings and now helps other men do the same.
I couldn't imagine myself being with a man in an emotional kind of relationship. What we promote is what God centricity looks like for Muslims, and we support them so they're living a life according to their values.
Ali says there's not a safe place for Muslim men to talk about their homosexual feelings. He's often the first port of call for men who open up about their struggle.
I've been very lucky to have people tell me about their same-sex attraction for the first time. Anyone in their life they're telling to. So I know it's a very, very delicate moment.
When men come to you who are struggling with same-sex attraction, what do you talk about? What do you do with them to help them overcome it?
We introduce them to, there's books, for example, which we tell them to read. We ask them to read the books, and if it resonates with them, if it connects with them, then come to us and we can offer more support. If they choose to then go further, then they can.
What does go further mean?
They can enroll to the weekly group, or they can enroll to one-to-one sessions. We can have an understanding of where the attractions are coming from, understanding, okay, what's behind these attractions? What am I really attracted to? Even just a little conversation of that will reveal the underlying issues which are there. He's a doctor.
Ali's work is based on early 20th century theory, which linked homosexuality to an absent father or a domineering mother. Ali says his same-sex attraction began when he was young.
I grew up in a very maternal household, so my dad worked 2 jobs. He wasn't really present. So there was this yearning for this masculine affirmation from a very young age. And that feeling or that yearning for masculine affirmation at puberty got sexualized.
So you think you developed same-sex attraction because of your environment growing up?
Yes.
You don't think you were born that way?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. I realized actually God hasn't made me this way. It was environmental factors which had brought in. Yeah, that was really my struggle with the faith at the start, because I was like, why would God send me to hell if he's created me this way? Doesn't make any sense, does it? So, yeah.
2 years ago, Ali felt like he'd got to a place where he was ready to marry a woman.
She specifically made it. I had to deal with the overwhelming same-sex attraction. I used to think about it every day. after some of the work which I had done, then I could approach marriage.
You went from having same-sex attraction and you overcame it, I guess?
Yeah, I would say...
So you think it works, you can change your sexual orientation?
I did experience a lessening of my same-sex attractions and an increase in the opposite sex attractions, yeah.
Are they completely gone or something?
No, I wouldn't say they're completely gone. It was coming to terms with painful things which have happened in the past and, addressing them.
For though they knew God, they did not honour him as God or give thanks to him. Therefore God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, to the degrading of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen.
Jeremy Marks used to be a conversion therapist. Today he embraces his sexuality and is married to a man. But he hasn't forgotten the shame which tormented him for years when he was younger. 20 years ago he found relief in the same theories Ali believes in today.
The great thing about it was that it stopped us feeling so bad about having gay feelings, because there was suddenly a possible reasonable explanation that didn't make us out to be dirty perverts who needed to be shunned by society.
For decades, Jeremy prayed for people to overcome their homosexual feelings. But over time, he became more and more doubtful if he was actually helping people.
What we were doing was actually not good news for anybody, because I saw older people having got terribly depressed, and so much so that they often couldn't function in their jobs, and they were just not functioning well at all. And I thought, there's something terribly wrong with this, and I can't put my finger on what it is.
With frustration building and a lack of results, one encounter changed Jeremy's mind for good.
And I started having people coming to me saying things like, I have decided to give God one last chance, can he change me or not? And I'd say, well, I have to believe that God is God and can do anything, but if he has not changed you, and certainly we haven't experienced any change, then it is possible there's another way of looking at this, but I don't know what it is. What's your experience? And I'll often invite them to tell me what's going on. And they might say to me, well, I went and slept with a guy recently and I felt wonderful. And I remember one chap coming and saying to me, he'd done this. He said, for the first time I felt I'd joined the human race. And I listened to him and I could see visibly the good effect this has had on him.
Jeremy remains a faithful Christian, but has turned his back on conversion therapy. He now reflects on the many years he tried to change people with regret.
It was often when you step back from being involved in that kind of ministry, you started to think, just a minute, what was all this about? Nothing's changed. I still have the same feelings. Is it me that's wrong, or is the ministry no good? Well, now that I realise I'm gay, now that I'm comfortable with being gay, I would never want anybody else to go through that. It's a waste of time. It's only reinforced feelings of being inadequate, or feelings of being sinful, or being abnormal or deviant. They only ever emphasise those feelings, and I don't want to go back there myself, and I don't want to see anybody else do so.
What would your life have looked like if you hadn't have ever come to terms with being gay?
I hate to think. If I hadn't come to terms with being gay, I'd probably be living in acute depression. I might have taken my life.
This is Naz. When he was 34, he came out to his parents. They told him to see a psychiatrist, thinking that he could be cured. 2 days later, he took his own life. He left behind his partner, Matt.
My Naz, my darling Naz, was a very proud man, a very proud person. He just wanted a simple, straightforward life where he could just exist as a person.
Naz and Matt were in a relationship for 13 years, but Naz's life as part of a conservative Muslim family wasn't as straightforward as he wanted.
We couldn't hold hands in public. We had to keep the blinds closed in our living room in case his family drove past and saw us together. Because Naz says to me, if his family ever find out that we're together and he's gay, they'll be praying on the doorstep until we're no longer together and Naz is no longer gay. He was essentially being treated as a disease. And that core part of him, his identity, which was the part of him that he was proud of the most, they were essentially telling him that he had to remove himself from himself. Ever since then, I became very much aware of the dangers of parents believing that there was a cure for being gay. The thing that he wanted most in life, that he knew he never could really have, was the unconditional love from his mom. That was a thing that he so desperately wanted. And he knew he could never have the unconditional love from his mom because she never knew who he really was and who she gave birth to.
Stories like Naz could continue to happen as long as LGBT people have no legal protection from the idea that their sexuality is wrong.
With so much of conversion therapy going on behind closed doors, it's hard to know the scale of the practice. So what can be done? Countries such as Spain, Malta and New Zealand have already banned it, and survivors like Joe say the UK must follow suit because for him and so many others, a ban would be crucial.
So what would a ban look like in practice? One Conservative Member of Parliament thinks she has the answer.
When I was elected, I said I'd be a voice for those who others seek to silence, and I stand here today to do exactly that. The need for this ban is quite simple. Victims of conversion therapy currently have no legal recourse to justice, and without a legislative ban, lives are being destroyed.
Alicia Kearns is spearheading a group of MPs campaigning to secure a ban. But without a clear legal definition of what conversion therapy is, a law can be elusive.
It covers everything from electrocution through to being, smacked around the face with the Bible and prayed over and told to spit out demons that are within you. So it's an incredibly difficult thing for how do you legislate for that kind of broad spectrum of kind of abusive practices. So my definition is all about going to the crux of the issue, which is that victims and survivors need a recourse to justice, and that's what they don't currently have in the law. So it's about making sure that if a person in a position of trust crosses a line, someone can go to the police, they can go and say, I have been abused, and the police actually have the framework to be able to assist them.
But then there's a backlash from people wanting to protect religious rights.
Look, the pushback from some religious organisations has been quite severe. I have received some appalling communications from people who want to twist this argument. My inbox has been full of abusive emails telling me that I want to attack religion or I don't understand faith. So this is essentially about respecting people's right to live their lives freely, and essentially anyone who protects conversion therapy is nothing more than a bigot.
But for Alicia, protecting LGBT rights and religious freedoms are equally important.
Religious freedoms are fundamental and we absolutely have to protect them. This isn't about policing religious belief, it's about making sure that somebody who is harmed by someone in a position of trust who's using religion against them is prevented from doing so. We will respect religious belief, but also people have not only a right to religious freedoms, but a right to live free of identity-based abuse.
So how far are we from a ban? The government has been promising to ban it since 2017. But nothing has happened until this year.
So can you promise to ban it?
We will be, yes.
We will then bring forward plans to ban it.
Measures will be brought forward to address racial and ethnic disparities and ban conversion therapy.
It was in the Queen's speech, which is so important because that was essentially the government saying love is love and no one should be put through this therapy. So the warning shot has gone out. We are going to ban this.
Although Alicia is hopeful a ban will come soon, not all campaigners share her optimism.
The battle for a ban on gay conversion therapy, the government's own advisor resigns, saying it's creating a hostile environment for LGBT plus people.
Jane Ozanne is one of the most influential campaigners against conversion therapy. She used to hold a senior position within the Church of England before she came out. She went through conversion therapy for many years and fears the ban won't go far enough.
One of my concerns is that there will be a loophole in terms of allowing consensual adults to consent to going through this, and I think that that is exceptionally dangerous.
So was the government implying conversion therapy can be consensual and you disagree?
So what the government seemed to be implying was that they were going to allow all sorts of exceptions that would put many people's lives at risk. And they may appear to consent, but actually, like myself, do not know the damage that they're putting themselves through. What the UN would say is you cannot consent to torture.
With the ban potentially having an exemption for people who seek out conversion therapy, can the practice ever truly be consensual?
I was making a conscious choice in a horrific situation, which makes it not a choice.
I don't think realistically that conversion therapy can be consensual, because I don't think people know what they're coming to.
You cannot consent to this sort of abuse that is going to harm you for life, and that's exactly how conversion therapy should be considered.
Jane doesn't think the ban will eliminate the practice overnight, but that it's a step in the right direction.
I'm under no disillusionment that a ban won't immediately stop people from practicing, but I think it also gives a very clear signal as a society what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Religious leaders, I think, will think twice if they are threatened with being criminalised for doing something that we all know is harmful.
But Ali thinks the ban would be a step backwards.
I fear this ban is a case of positive discrimination towards one sexuality, LGBT, and not towards heterosexuality.
What would you say to someone who believes that conversion therapy should be protected under religious freedoms?
I think what I'd say to that person is see the hurt of the people who have been through it. See the consequences of what happens to those who've been through it.
Many years later, Joe is still trying to come to terms with the ramifications of his conversion therapy.
So this book, Torah Queries, it's been a place where I've learned how to integrate my Jewish and kind of queer identities together. So that's one of the kind of books that I keep on coming back to whenever I'm thinking about queerness. I'm a survivor of conversion therapy. I was lucky. Many people don't survive conversion therapy. I still deal with shame. I still deal with the feeling of loss, that I lost that time of my life because I was spent so much time trying to, I guess, kind of, just attack myself until I changed.
What would you say to someone now who is seeking conversion therapy like you did?
I would say you're enough as you are. There is a future for you, and there is no need to try and change yourself because your identity is a gift.
Jeremy has now accepted that gift.
I still wonder how, if I dare believe that I could have reached a place where I could be so happy now. I have a wonderful young Italian man in my life.
The UK has come a long way towards a society which accepts that not everyone is heterosexual or cisgendered. Today, social attitudes may have changed, but legislation still lags behind. For now, LGBT people have no legal protection from the idea that they need to change.
A ban on conversion therapy, for me, would mean the country saying to me and other people like me, LGBT people, you are safe in this country, you are enough as you are. It would make sure that what I experience doesn't happen to anybody else.
I would be so relieved to see a ban.
The evidence points towards how harmful conversion therapy can be. Legislators say that religious freedoms must be protected, but campaigners warn that these freedoms mustn't come at the expense of human rights.
I don't think a ban on conversion therapy really has anything to do with the practice of one's faith. If one took seriously Jesus' simple command that a child understands to love your neighbour as yourself, there is nothing about conversion therapy that's truly loving or caring about your neighbour.
As legislators, we have a duty to protect the vulnerable and deliver a ban. And to the survivors of conversion therapy and all those hurting, to all those made to feel ashamed, I say today, love is not conditional. You do not need to change. Love is not a pathology, and it damn well doesn't need treating.
All we want to do is to love and be loved, and to be able to be the people we've been created to be. And it breaks my heart that people don't understand that love is love in whatever form it is found.